and let us all do we can to build a better future.
Award-winning journalist, and he is, and outstanding reporter, commentator, investigative journalist, Max Blumenthal, did a phenomenal piece for the Gray Zone. And we actually talked about this on our Rockfin special that's at 3 p.m. every Thursday, where he was confronting a lot of these politicians in Washington, D.C. about, hey, there's a danger about a no-fly zone, and, what happens if we start engaging in people. And see, the thing is, Max Blumenthal is doing a phenomenal job in explaining why we shouldn't do anything further to escalate into the situation. But see, the thing is, and again, shout out to Max Blumenthal and the entire team at the Gray Zone. When confronting these jagoff politicians, they really don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. So let's play this first video if we can in its full entirety.
And do you support a no-fly zone in Ukraine?
I support everything that has to do with punishing Vladimir Putin and helping the Ukrainians.
Wouldn't that mean direct conventional warfare with Russia?
I don't know what it will mean, but freedom is not free.
So you don't know what a no-fly zone will mean. If you have to shoot down Russian planes,
Of course.
So conventional war with Russia.
Listen, thank you.
Hi. And do you support...
Hold on, wait, pause it, because I want to play it again. But let's just be very clear here. I have to give credit to Max Blumenthal for keeping his composure. Because here you have a lawmaker that not only makes decisions for her constituents that she represents, but also all of us are impacted by decisions that all these lawmakers make. But seriously, lady, are you for real? Are you for real with me right now? You have no idea what happens when we implement a no-fly zone, and the fact that U.S. and NATO jets will have to engage with Russian jets, and that is basically full-on conflict. Let's play it again, just so everyone can hear what this lawmaker was basically saying.
A no-fly zone in Ukraine?
I support everything that has to do with punishing Vladimir Putin and helping the Ukrainians.
Wouldn't that mean direct conventional warfare with Russia?
I don't know what it will mean, but freedom is not free.
So you don't know what a no-fly zone will mean. If you have to shoot down Russian planes,
Of course.
So conventional war with Russia.
Listen, thank you.
Hi.
Okay.
And do you support a no-fly...
Let's end it here. So, in a recent video that Max Blumenthal also recently posted on social media, he was on a few news shows. Here we have him explaining in detail what it means if a no-fly zone is implemented in the conflict in Ukraine. Now look, I want to be very clear here, folks. This war, every minute it continues on, is one step closer for it reaching to Armageddon. I find this entire conflict to be ridiculous. It's once again the rich telling the poor that they have to fight each other. And it's every day it goes on, more innocent people are dying. This is madness and stupidity, and there were ways to avoid this. There's failure on Russia's part, but there's also failure on Biden and Harris and the other members of NATO for letting this thing escalate to where it got to where it's at now. So let's play this next video if we can.
Had we had nuclear weapon right now, we would have been in a completely different situation. Secondly, this argument that we don't want to escalate, well, to what point is it not escalation? We already know that the Russians have been using cluster bombs here in Ukraine. They're threatening using chemical bombs here in Ukraine. What is not escalation? Like, how many deaths do we have to wait until we know that, okay, that is escalation?
Okay. But the allegation of the potential use of chemical weapons really reminds me of what we saw in Syria. And so let me address this idea of the no-fly zone, first of all. A no-fly zone, as is understood by the Biden administration, is a call for would amount to conventional war with a nuclear power in Russia. It would require the United States to not only attack Russian aircraft in the air, it would require attacks on Russian anti-aircraft missiles that are very sophisticated, like the S-300, inside Russia. It would also could cause attacks inside Poland, which is being asked to supply MiG-29s to the totally vanquished Ukrainian Air Force, which has no command and control. It is not only it's a delusional fantasy because the United States and its allies, if you can even call them that, are, or I would call them their junior partners, are not interested in a conventional war with a nuclear power. That would be a disaster. And so you have an element an extremist element in Washington among the neoconservatives, and then you have in the Ukrainian government who are trying to trigger this. And we are likely to see some kind of allegation of a chemical attack like we saw in April 2018 in Syria, in Duma, which was clearly a staged event, as the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons inspectors on the ground have clearly demonstrated. It was staged in order to trigger Western missile strikes and a no-fly zone. And we have to be aware of the possibility, I would even say the inevitability, of these kinds of incidents to trigger Western intervention when the West wants to do no such direct intervention.
All right. Now, I didn't pause throughout the entire thing because I would find it insulting to interrupt while Max is talking about the dangers of what would happen if we got into a conventional conflict with Russia. And he's spot on. It would lead to Armageddon. There is no recovery. It would be the end of us as a species, and this war is downright maddening. Now, the thing is, for a long time, especially for the previous days when this war first started, you had everyone from corporate media, blue check marks, saying we got to do something for Ukraine. We got to do this. We have to send forces there. We have to send money, military aid. And as I covered on our Rockfin show, Congress is already giving the green light to send in military aid. It's amazing where they get the money for war, but not enough money for affordable education, student debt forgiveness, medical debt forgiveness. I guess we just don't have a chance to do that at all. But that's the kind of system we live in. Neoliberalism at its finest. Now, I do hope that somehow diplomacy does prevail, that this conflict will end. But it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. And of course, corporate media right now has this ridiculous hard-on for ongoing conflict. So I got a couple of videos from Case Study QB. Again, everyone be sure to support Case Study QB. He's doing phenomenal work. I want to play this first video because here you have at least this one segment, because the next two segments that will follow will be corporate media foaming at the mouth for more conflict, especially our good friend from Morning Joe. But here's a little video from CNN where I guess the American people are given a detailed information, not as good as Max Blumenthal's information of what a no-fly zone would mean, but let's play it. I think it's very important that people see this.
You have the president, Volodymyr Zelensky, saying that they need a no-fly zone. Right now, the U.S. is opposed to that. But what about a limited, as some folks here, some experts in the U.S. are calling for, a limited no-fly zone with a very narrow mission? Is that a possibility?
Pause it here for a second, if we can. Limited. No. That's not how conflicts work. Limited. Lady, look, all these experts that are saying limited, soon it becomes a full-on extension. Okay, there's no way you're going to implement a limited no-fly zone. Because as soon as a Russian jet or an American jet engage each other, or a NATO jet engages with Russian jets or whatever, it's going to be a full-on conflict. There's no argument or debate about it. Oh, what do you expect? NATO shoots down a Russian jet, and what's Putin and the Russian military supposed to think? Oh, you got one of our fighter pilots down. Nothing we can do about it. No. They're going to get a couple more of their fighter pilots in their jets and shoot down NATO and American jets as well. That's what will happen. That's what's going to happen. Let's play this video in its entirety again.
Nut to crack. When you have a no-fly zone, it has to be enforced. You put NATO and U.S. pilots over this airspace, and what you're saying, and in advance of that, you're going after enemy surface-to-air systems. So the pilots have reduced the threat, and if anybody from the Russian side were to come and venture in, you now have an opportunity to go after them, not having to worry too much with the surface-to-air threat. So a limited no-fly zone indicates that you're not a priori going to go after those surface-to-air missiles, but you're simply going to provide protection along a very narrowly defined corridor. The problem with that is you still have to enforce the violations. Oh, by the way, if you go up there without eliminating surface-to-air missiles, you're still very vulnerable. The Russians don't do what they say they're going to do. we're not going to fire at you. Guess what? I've got a surface-to-air missile that's hot and loaded and ready to go, and it's coming after NATO and U.S. pilots. It's an incredibly dangerous mission. I don't see that it is feasible.
All right, not feasible at this point. General, thank you.
All right, so again, shout out to Max Blumenthal in the previous video where he explained, again, the dangers of a no-fly zone and why we should not have conventional conflict. But also, this general on CNN explained in detail why the idea, even a limited no-fly zone, is a dumb idea. Because I'm going to quote someone in the chat here, limited soon becomes unlimited. There's no way that a limited no-fly zone won't lead up to a full-on no-fly zone. Do you understand how crazy this will be? This is, again, something that should have been avoided. But yet, the Biden-Harris administration failed in its diplomatic talks with Russia. Russia itself doing this reckless invasion. It's madness. And every time we enter these conflicts, we edge closer towards Armageddon. We have to be better than this as a society. Now, everyone, be prepared to vomit in your brains as I bring in our good friends from Morning Joe, where this jagoff is basically saying, no. Everyone, calm down. We're not going to go into World War III. No, we just got to engage. There's no way it's going to happen. No way the nukes will drop. Conventional warfare will never lead to nuclear warfare. Come on, it won't happen. Morning Joe's telling you it's okay. Remember, this is the same jagoff whose intern somehow mysteriously kind of sort of died in his office. I don't know. It's kind of suspicious, but yet here he is giving the news to you. Again, shout out to Case Study QB. Case Study, I have no idea how you sit through corporate media. Buddy, you are the champion, and seriously, we thank you for sitting through this. So everyone, be prepared to be enraged, vomit in your brain, and listen to Morning Joe tell you to calm down and don't panic. Let's play it.
Retreated from Syria. We had 2,500 troops there that were doing an extraordinary job protecting people. You know what? We're seeing what you're doing in Ukraine. We're seeing that the terror is still going on in Syria. We understand that Donald Trump wanted to turn Syria over to the Russians for the first time since 1973, giving them a beachhead. You know, we just may have to send those 2,500 troops, those 3,000 troops back into Syria to act as peacekeepers again.
So pause. So basically Morning Joe is saying, hey, let's escalate this conflict further. Let's put in those 3,000 troops back into Syria, into another war zone that we have no business being into. Let's further destabilize the region. Let's cause further instability. Let's cause chaos and destruction. And putting our forces in a situation that is not convenient for them and that will probably lead to a lot of their deaths. So Morning Joe is saying, let's escalate the situation further. Let's go back to Syria. Let's cause some more problems there. Because Russia's in Ukraine and we got to get back at Russia. We got to do everything we can. Hey, Morning Joe. Are you going to put on that little fancy press Kevlar and helmet and body armor and all that good stuff and go ahead and be embedded with the troops while they're there? Are you going to stand in solidarity with them? Are you going to go there, Morning Joe? Yeah, probably not. You're going to probably send some lower-ranking reporter there and be like, oh, wow, that guy or gal sure is brave. This is the news that we get from corporate media. The authoritative source. The authoritative source. And they're saying, hey, let's go back to Syria. Let's put more troops there because Russia. Let's play the video.
And I'm not saying we do it, but putting it out there and asking Vladimir Putin, okay, you're saying we can't cross that line? Okay, fine, I'll tell you one line we can cross. We can go back into Syria because unlike Donald Trump, we don't want to cede Syria to you. I mean, we just need more aggressive thinking that doesn't trigger World War III because Putin, you're right, we're always on the defensive. We're always reacting to him. It's time that we lean forward a bit.
All right, let's pause it here. So when he says it's time to lean forward, let's be more aggressive, what does that mean? Bombing Russian convoys? Air raids into Russian territory? having U.S. troops engage Russian troops? What exactly are you suggesting? Because the thing is, the way you're describing it, good old Joe, Morning Joe, there's no way any kind of further aggressive policies would not instigate an ongoing conflict. And as everything will continue to escalate, it will lead towards, eventually, one side pushing that shiny red button for a nuke to drop on a city, wherever it is on the globe. This is the guy that's saying, an authoritative news media outlet saying, we need to be more aggressive. We need to fight. Send the poor people to fight this war for the rich. He's telling poor people, hey, you're going to have to fight and die for a BS war. And yes, your hometown might get nuked, but we got to be aggressive. That's his policy thinking. That's big brain mentality right there. Right, Morning Joe? Let's play the rest of the video if we can.
Well, and just to reemphasize, because we go from doing what we're doing now to World War III in these conversations, right? Everybody says that. Right. We don't want to do that because it's escalatory. And I want to be crystal clear. I just wrote my latest column about how to avoid nuclear Armageddon. Of course, we're all for that. But if we can establish, and I think we have established, by the way, according to people I talked to in the government, that Putin was that was more bark than bite, that he is not going to go on a suicide mission and launch a nuclear holocaust, then you have to say, well, what is between where we're at now and below the threshold of nuclear holocaust? It's a lot. And when we say we're in fear of escalation, I want...
This guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. See, he gets to sit in his nice little air-conditioned room giving his advice and opinion, right? And his opinion is full of crap. If we start engaging with Russian forces, NATO, the U.S. starts doing that, it will inevitably lead to that red button that says nukes. That's what it's going to lead up to. It's inexcusable that this is what's allowed on MSNBC. Everyone has every right to be afraid of how this conflict will escalate further. And yet you have an example of corporate media foaming at the mouth. Oh, we got to be more aggressive. We got to start bombing. We got to start shooting. We got to go back into Syria. We got to engage Putin in Ukraine. We got to do this. But don't worry. It won't lead to World War III. We promise. It won't. It won't. It'll never happen. There's no way World War III will happen. Honestly, these are the people that have the platform that big tech and social media says are authoritative and can be trusted. They get to say this stuff because these pundits on social media and their guests make six-figure salaries. They're okay. They're part of the inner Washington, D.C. swamp bubble. They're all friends with each other. They're all jagoffs. And they're telling you, don't worry. There's no way further conflict with Russia will lead to World War III. In what world are they living in? I'll tell you what world they're living in. With their head right up their asses. That's the world they're living in. They don't see the real danger on the ground. And it's okay for them, I guess in their mind, to play with our lives. You know, at home right now, again, we have a huge problem with inflation. Some parts of the country, gas is $7 to $8 a gallon. Yeah, it's getting that bad. People are still being kicked out of their homes and apartments. People don't have health care. People are not getting any kind of student debt relief or medical debt relief. Yet these people at MSNBC, good old Morning Joe, are advocating to be more aggressive. What a bunch of assholes. Play the rest of the video.
I want some more fidelity to what that means, because I don't think he can attack NATO right now for the reasons I already described. And so I just think, just as a posture, even the way we talk, we have to talk with more confidence about what we're doing. The world wants us to be stronger, not just the Ukrainians, but in the Middle East, in Asia. They want us to be stronger. And I think we need to understand that that has implications for what we do in Ukraine. If we lose in Ukraine, that has giant implications for our strategic posture around the world.
Let's pause it here.
I think
he said if we lose in Ukraine. Now, so far, Allied forces are not in Ukraine. And mind you, again, this is the failure of the Western powers in their diplomatic talks with Russia. Okay? They're the ones that led to this failure. The diplomats and the politicians on both sides, their failure to communicate led us to this horrifying path that we're in right now. They're the ones that did it. And yet, again, they're saying we got to be more aggressive. We got to do this. We have to do that. Hey, if they're going to fight that war, go ahead. Go fight that war. But sooner or later, someone's going to push the red button, and then cities get vaporized. I don't want to hear that argument of, no, there's no way it could lead to World War III. No. There's no way any kind of conflict or implementing a no-fly zone won't lead to conflict with Russia or any kind of conventional warfare. No, World War III would never happen. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. That's what they're saying. It's okay for them to make this gamble, I guess, with our lives. Because what? Someone wants to be right? Because people are still traumatized by Trump? Or the conspiracy theory of Russiagate? Yeah, these jagoffs want to do that. Let's play the rest of the video.
I think rather than being cautious, we need to lean into that fight and do whatever we can to not give Putin a victory in Ukraine.
Yep. It's all about trying to stop Putin. And look, I wish this conflict never happened in the first place. I wish that there was a way to somehow reverse time, but that's science fiction. We live in reality. And the reality is, you have these politicians and these pundits who are all gung-ho for war. But what they're not telling the American people is that the American people, poor people, will have to fight other poor people. And, hey, controversial statement in 3, 2, 1. No matter what part of the globe you're in, there's somebody like you in another country. Here in the United States, hey, guess what, to my viewing audience? There's somebody like you in any one of the European countries. There's somebody like you in Russia. There's probably somebody like you in China. There's probably somebody like you in Iran and North Korea. Anywhere in the globe, there's somebody just like you. Same fears, hopes, wants, dreams, all that good stuff. And we all share the same planet. Yet these politicians, all across the globe, the 1%, the people who control everything, have us fight their petty conflicts. Isn't it enough? Haven't we all suffered enough? Enough good people have died. And until people say no, further conflict and war, until people can actually hold their own governments accountable, nothing is going to fundamentally change. We as a people, as a species, have what it takes to build a better future. These politicians are the ones that are holding us back. And the rich are the ones dictating how things are going. So long as they can earn a profit, they'll keep on sacrificing our lives. I want to pull up this next video from Case Study QB. Again, he's doing phenomenal work. Follow him on Twitter. Support his YouTube channel. Support his Odyssey page. He's doing some great stuff. Let's play this next video.
The Ukrainian president has repeatedly asked for the planes as an alternative solution to a no-fly zone. Fears of escalation with that as well. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked yesterday about the decision to not send these planes.
The Ukrainian Air Force has several squadrons of fully mission-capable aircraft, and although Russian air capabilities are significant, their effectiveness has been limited due to Ukrainian strategic, operational, and tactical ground-based air defense systems, surface-to-air missiles, and manpads. The assessment of our military has been that continuing to provide defensive assistance and materials in that form is what is most useful and effective at this point in time.
Critics of this decision say the U.S. should be doing more. They argue the United States is already involved by sending missiles and other weapons to Ukraine, so sending fighter jets shouldn't be that much more of a provocation to Putin. Some Republican senators yesterday called for the jets to be sent immediately.
Send these MiGs. And the question is, well, why aren't they being sent? Because we've heard now for days that this is something that's being discussed. Enough talk. People are dying. Send them the planes that they need. They say they need MiGs. People say, well, maybe that's not the idea.
So, again, hey, for all those who say we don't criticize Republican lawmakers, here you have son of a rich man, Mitt Romney, another jagoff millionaire who's in the United States Senate, who was Trump's bottom bitch, basically. Let's be very clear. The way Trump slapped him around It's downright hilarious. Here you have a Republican lawmakers, very similar to all the jagoff Democratic lawmakers, saying, yes, we need more war. We need to start funding more for our troops. We need to start doing this for our troops and doing that for our troops. Let's do this and that. Let's send in the MiGs. Let's send in more money for war. Typical Republican lawmaker, just like any other Democratic lawmaker. Quote the great George Carlin, and my goodness, he would be laughing his ass off if he was alive today. He's probably laughing his ass off right now. It's one big club. You ain't in it. Always remember, you will never have a seat at the table. Let's play the rest of this video again. Huge shout out to Case Study QB.
Send these MiGs. And the question is, well, why aren't they being sent? Because we've heard now for days that this is something that's being discussed. Enough talk. People are dying. Send them the planes that they need. They say they need MiGs. People say, well, maybe that's not the ideal weapon for them. That's what they say they want. They're there. They have the eyes to determine what they want. They want MiGs. Get them the MiGs.
And here's what breaks my heart. This is dishonorable. It's one thing to be incompetent. It's another thing to be dishonorable. Putin's got to be happy today knowing he backed us down. And the Ukrainians got to have a heavy heart knowing that the one thing they need that's available to them that we're not giving was taken off the table. Good day for Putin, bad day for the Ukraine, and a dishonorable day for America.
Okay, Lindsey Graham cracker. Obviously, you seem to be gung-ho for war. Boot up and suit up. You and good old Mitt Romney can go to Ukraine and fight. Go ahead, boot up and suit up. Do it. Somehow you and your fantastic friends in Washington, D.C. are able to, even before this conflict in Ukraine, you're able to come up money for the military-industrial complex like that. Money for the prison-industrial complex like that. You and your fantastic friends in Washington, D.C. in both the Democratic and Republican parties are able to come up with money to bail out the banks, corporations, Wall Street executives, hedge fund managers. You guys can do that. Money for everything else, but screw the people. There is an inflation happening. And I know we're going to see in the midterms, Democratic lawmakers are going to be blaming Republican lawmakers, and Republican lawmakers will be blaming the Democratic lawmakers. Both parties are responsible, and both parties are laughing behind the scenes. They dance and drink because they believe you, the American people, are weak. They don't care about you. They don't think about you. And they're saying, oh, send the MiG, send in warfare. Now, I'm going to read a tweet here. It's not in the show notes because before I pull up the final video, it's a good palate cleanser, that the final video to pull up. But I want to read this tweet. It's from Joe30330, allegedly. Again, I'm pretty sure it's not Joe Biden who tweeted this out. I want to be clear, and this tweet came out on March 11th at 12:40 p.m. I want to be clear, Jack, he didn't write that. I want to be clear. We will defend every inch of NATO territory with the full might of a united, galvanized NATO. But we will not fight a war against Russia in Ukraine. A direct confrontation between NATO and Russia is World War III, and something we must strive to prevent. That's from the president. I just personally wish that the president's administration, as well as the other powers involved in diplomatic talks before we got to this war, somehow were able to use their intelligence and diplomatic skills to avoid this conflict in the first place. Sadly, that's not the case. So, first, let me say I apologize to my viewing audience for all of you having to sit through at least some video excerpts from CNN and MSNBC. I shouldn't have done that to all of you. So, I'm going to end it with the outstanding reporting and coverage of Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone in regards to confronting these lawmakers. I think this last interview is downright pretty good. So, let's play it.
Thomas Massie, you've been coming under attack for your one pretty much lone vote, along with two others, on the resolution supporting Ukraine. What was the motive behind your vote?
Well, first of all, I support the right of the Ukrainian people to determine their destiny, to have a sovereign country free from invasion. But this bill, I feel like was counter to the purposes of supporting the people of Ukraine. First of all, the bill calls for basically overthrowing the government of Belarus. I mean, why should that be in a resolution supporting the Ukrainian people? Why should we expand this conflict to Belarus? Yes, it's true that Russia's come through Belarus, but did they have much say in it? And so that shouldn't have been in the resolution. But probably the most troubling part of this resolution was it called for open-ended military assistance. It didn't say only equipment. It didn't say that there wouldn't be a no-fly zone. I mean, because people who are calling for no-fly zone voted for that resolution, I have to assume that resolution would support such a thing the way that it was worded, or even boots on the ground, which we should never have there.
No-fly zone would be a recipe for conventional war.
Well, a no-fly zone would mean American pilots shooting down Russian pilots in jets. And the next step, I mean, there aren't many escalations above that, but certainly it leads to, and if it weren't an American plane, it would be a NATO plane. And now that country would be the target of Russia, presumably, probably a missile launch that would drag 20 other countries into the conflict, expanding this globally. This is not a global conflict at the time, and we should do everything we can to keep it localized and not become a global crisis.
All right. Outstanding reporting again from Max Blumenthal of the Gray Zone. Him and his entire team there are doing fantastic work and coverage. And I just wanted to end that on the segment because there you have a Republican lawmaker. And yes, there are some Democratic and Republican lawmakers that are just saying, no, we should not be engaged in this conflict at all. But hey, listen, if I see one Republican lawmaker saying the right thing, and I'm pretty sure there's a million things I disagree with that representative about from Kentucky, I have to agree with him on this. We cannot let this conflict become global. We cannot engage in conventional warfare with Russia. It will only lead to World War III and the inevitable extinction of humanity. I don't know what kind of weapons we'll be using in World War III, but I could promise you this. World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. It's a dark quote, but I want everyone to understand we have to avoid this. And hopefully diplomacy will prevail. Somehow this war will end. But further conflict will be the end of us as a species. And there's so much more that we are capable of. We are better than this. But know this, you have these politicians and these pundits that are foaming at the mouth for endless war. Thank goodness that there are independent media outlets and people like Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone that are actually giving a unique and good perspective about this and why the American people need to be more informed. Censorship is never the answer.